In fact, we really do intend this to be. Gems from the Wisdom tradition is calling on people from all different life experiences and all different upbringings to share with us what it is that they have learned during their lifetime, and also to help us to integrate with one another some of these gems, so that if we think about the statue that Maurice read to us about, we could imagine kind of like having a crown on the statue with gems and jewels from all over the world. And so we are very fortunate to have with us today someone who is going to be able to help us to unpack the idea of surrender from the Islamic tradition, and that being a very appropriate thing to do this week, since we will have the start of Ramadan on Tuesday, April 13th. The person who's joining us is someone who is very deeply imbibed the Sufi tradition, and is in fact the founder of a Sufi Institute in Santa Barbara, California. Her name's Fariba Entishari, and it is with great pleasure and honor that I ask her to start us off on this conversation on the topic of Islam means surrender.
Thank you, Renee, and hello everyone, welcome. I'm going to share my screen with you. So we are going to talk about Islam and the meaning of Islam and what it means to us today. So we start from the roots, actually, of the meaning of the word Islam. And as you can see on my screen, Islam is an Arabic word meaning submission, from submission to surrender. That would be very interesting to examine and see. Mm-hmm. And so when the word submission, a lot of people have problem with the word submission, especially in our time. So submission to what? And in the truth is submission to will of God, not anything else. So the God, the source, the creator, Allah, and the submission to the qualities of God is one of the most important aspects of Sufism. If you have heard that there are 99 words, 99 attributes of God that Sufis use as their mantra, and reason for the vision and breathe in and out word like all loving, one of the attributes is for us, for our holy breath, to be able to take in the attributes of all loving, not because life is easy, not because easy to practice in all circumstances to be all loving, but because it's one aspect of God that we focus on, to meditate on. So the submission is to will of God. It can be misunderstood, and we can talk about that in our discussion. But in order to know how we got from submission to surrender, I made a little chart here. All Arabic verbs are 3 letters. And here you have to think about the direction of the English goes from actually right to left, like in Arabic and Farsi. So all Arabic is 3 letters. Here we have 3 letters that is the verb of to submit. Se, lam, mim, S-L-M. And even by glancing of these derivations of the word to submit, you can recognize the first one is Islam. You can recognize in every of these words the S, the Se sound, the L sound, the Se sound again, the L sound, the Min, Me sound, and then it comes to Taslim. So in Islam, in Arabic, what we do is we take the three, it's very precise language. The grammar of it, it can be learned based on the rules. It's almost opposite of English. English has exceptions after exceptions after exceptions after exceptions. So it takes more energy to study the exceptions than the language. In Arabic, everything is very, very regular. There are few exceptions, especially compared to English. So when you take these three letters that create the word to submit, the verb to submit, and put it in different derivations of the roots of salama, what happens is you have the words nouns like peace. So this goes back, salam goes back to the root of to submit, which means peace. Solemn means health or healthy. Taslim means surrender. So I just wanted to show you from the roots of the language, how is it that it's sometimes to submit and sometimes surrender? I think surrendering, although it can be equally challenging for our human nature, is a word that it's more, I would say, digestible, especially in Sufism, because the person who is the seeker of the path of the truth, the Sufi, is searching her or his own direct connection to the source. And beyond it is the understanding that I am, or you are, or he is, and she is, and also animals and the trees, they are the whole there. We are the holder of the breath of the life and livelihood. In being the chalice of the holy breath gives us the connection to the source, to the whole. And while we are on the earth, so our body, we are, our essence, our spirit, our soul is in our body on the earth. And the truth is not like we can see the source, we can see the tangible. But between the tangible and what we cannot see, which they call intangible, there is a direct connection that we, as a part of the holy breath, try to connect to while we are living on the earth. And how do we connect to that? With expansion. And Maurice mentioned a quote that a droplet comes to the understanding of having the quality of the ocean. The connection is something that we work on our whole life. And in order to do that, we need to just leave aside some of the veils. That's one of the aspects of Sufism that I am absolutely in love with, because it's talking about peeling and taking away, lifting up one veil after another to be able to connect directly to the source. And it has also the inclination of the wisdom, because we all have our own projections because of our personality, mind, the level of understandings. And a lot of these layers, it advised to us to be able to sit, put it aside, to be able to connect with our intuition and inner senses to the source. And that also needs an amount of letting go and surrendering of who we think we are and who we are in essence and in the quality of how we can evolve to this higher understanding of ourself. So I would like, from this surrendering that we talk about, to just connect to Rumi's teacher. Rumi, as we know, was a 13th century poet, 800 years ago. And he was an Islamic jurist, but for him, always was a question of knowing more and seeking for more. His father was very much practicing half Sufism and half also Islam. He was also an Islamic jurist. So when he was 40 years old, he met a man, a wandering dervish, a Sufi, called Shams of Tabriz, Shams al-Din of Tabriz. And Shams wasn't almost like obeying any rules or law. He was very free in his spirit. He was very connected to the divine. And he really was the teacher that could show him that everything that he is practicing, although is great, like, helping poor, practicing his faith, Islam, but there is always something more that he can connect to. Also, we should understand that Rumi was always not through his only through his father, but also through the knowledge that he accumulated during his life. Had a high rank. His ego was pretty much an ego that was worshipped by a lot of people. He was funny. He made sense to people. People sought after him to understand themselves. So he had his ego probably identified with himself, but Shams came to his life and basically asked him to leave everything aside. So it was layers of surrendering for Rumi to leave aside what he knew for 40 years of himself, what he knew of from himself for 40 years was basically, he is these mighty scholars adored by everyone, adored by people of the town, all high rank people. The king even, they said, would come and help him to sit on his horse to go to the university that he had in Konya. So I don't think we really in life notice how much ego, and probably in this case wasn't even an unhealthy ego, a healthy ego attached to what we know and what we can. But imagine a teacher comes in and say, leave all of it aside. Just imagine for a moment for yourself that what you know about yourself, what you understand about yourself, how much value and part of you is who people perceive you as to be. The rank, the car, the house, all of these things that's important still in our society, and probably even more important, I don't know, didn't live in 13th century that I remember right now. But these are all layers of our egos that tell us all the time who we are. It becomes our identity. And surrendering means you just have to be able to put it aside and go behind it. And it was as hard as for any of us for Rumi, but the unusual teacher Shams could teach him in some level, you know, break open the shell and say, hey, look at to the spirit within you. It's not just knowing, it's something else there. And we have to thank Shams for these 60,000 passionate lines of poetry that Rumi had left behind. And also honor that he is helping us with these passionate words that speaks to our person. These passionate words also tap on our hearts and our own inner knowing. That's what the surrendering help us to see. So in order to introduce Shams to you in small gems of his talking to Rumi, let's look at these. Your will or God will. Who am I to tell the king to take the cup from here and put it somewhere else? Everything is perfect as it is. And Shams al-Din of Tabriz, Shams was from Tabriz. And Shams means sun, S-U-N, and Din means path. So even the name of Rumi's teacher was the son of the path, and his city is Tabriz. But look what he's talking about. Who am I to tell the king to take the cup from here and put it somewhere else? Everything is perfect as it is. So this is like the highest rank of dissolving our will in the will of the whole. And that's another aspect of Sufism that I like, is just not saying God and misusing the word of God. The capital will of the whole universe. It's a flow of perpetuation of creation that we have a way to be connected to. And when we practice to surrender some part and piece of our personalities, what we know about ourselves, something else, some other level of intuitions opens up to us. And that opening takes us to a place that we can align and harmonize with the will of the whole, like the droplet of the water being connected to the ocean, although, you know, physically is separated. So it's taking on what really is within and opening up our chest and looking for these inner senses, the inner vibration, whatever you would like to call it, that will connect us to the whole. And the whole is also here as the will of God. So in order for Rumi to understand his teacher, because this is pretty high rank, and not everyone can get to completely being dissolved and connected to the will of the whole universe and say everything is perfect in every moment that it is. I just show you two small verses of Masnavi. Here is Rumi is talking about a story to just teach us about our inner senses. We have 5 physical senses, so he's passionately wanted to share these layers of intuitions. So, and he can almost, he talks about shams and he almost cannot really find words to get us there. So he says something like that. خود غریبی در جهان چون شمس نیست. شمس جان باقی است تو کورا امس نیست. So nothing is a stranger than Shams in this universe. So in reality, people who can do what Shams could absorb, being completely absorbed into the will of the whole, it's not so many people who can do that. And it's strange to come across someone like a teacher like him or Shams like him. And now he plays with his name, which means son. Says the son of enlightenment that has no yesterday. So it's kind of a little indication to us that if we want to really dissolve in who we are in our essence, one of the conditions he leaves for us or indicates that Shams had no memory of the past. And then he indicates also no worry about the future. So what it leaves for us is just now. He wants us to dive within every moment with our holy breath and connect to the majesty behind every breath. So these are all, I would say, not very easy concepts that we're sitting with. But this is another one, and that's about the Sufi. It says, تو مگر خود مرد صوفی نیستی، هست را از نسیه خیزد نیستی. Are you not a Sufi yourself? Are you not looking for the path of enlightenment and searching to connect to the source? Then why do you only pay attention to existence and ignore non-existence? So it's really, really important in this tradition to be able to understand tangible, understand existence, understand science, understand knowledge, but also be able to understand what is yet not being born. And it's sitting in non-existence, it's not created, it's not tangible. And it shows the depth of the inner senses, the ability of our inner senses that can connect us to the vibration of the ocean, of the whole world, of the universe, and also the layers that we have. So that was just a small description of what they aim for. And if we just put it in a summary, they aim for connecting in a higher level within themselves and putting aside the layers of personality, mind, whatever we assume we know about ourselves, whatever we perceive to understand about the world and ourselves, put it aside and be really in tune and alert to something that we can recognize in our essence. Only if we work and polish, which is another description of Sufi, is someone who's polishing his or her heart, her own heart, to be able to not only reflect the whole beauty of the universe, but also be connected to it. So this is just in a nutshell, and I have a poem. So Renee, shall we do the poem, or you wanted to open it up to talk?
Let's open it up to a little, to people for conversation for a little bit. And then as you see the perfect opportunity, which I'm sure it will open itself, then why don't you go to the poem at that point in time? Does that sound good?
Everything sounds good.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Wonderful. Well, for the moment, I'm going to take off your,
Oh, okay.
yeah, or you can, and then we can be on gallery mode and see one another. Oh,
All right.
perfect. Yeah. Oh. You know, last week, our conversation was in honor of Easter, with the topic being rising up. And our speaker took us to the concept of forgiveness as being one of the key terms, key concepts that was so revolutionary to the Judaic world into which Jesus was born. And forgiveness just was not part of what human beings did. Maybe God could forgive, but human beings didn't. And so to take that concept of forgiveness, and then whether we look at it from the standpoint of surrender or the standpoint of submission, I was wondering how those two were connected. I think that they really are. And one of the thoughts that came to mind was that both forgiveness and surrender or submission, as you've discussed it, have to do with a radical acceptance of what is.
Actually, you're bringing up the whole essence of my spiritual practice has been always when you can accept what it is, then probably a field opens up to show you where are the solutions. And that's very hard because we perceive the whole world from our own point and from our own connection to it. And I think a big part of the expansion that the Sufi talks about for us to open up to understand that our essence is love has something to do with what you say. Because through the opening up, we are able to consider more perspectives of other people, more point of view. We're not petty in our mind to say my way or highway. We have layers of understandings of who is suffering, who is not suffering, who is saying what. The more it's about wisdom, it's about the inner knowing. We know that we are connected to everyone through our vibration. It's not only the words, it's not only the hand movements and behavior. We go to a room and no one is there, and we know the walls have absorbed love. Or there was a fight before we arrived. We have all those abilities, and I think the Sufi path of love invites us and encourages us to be able to put our attention on all these tangible and intangible and back and forth and not be only in our own limited worldview, but also always include more and more. And that's a part of the expansion that they talk about. That's why we are one, means we understand multitude, and everyone, the trees, the animals, the water, the climate, other people. So for sure, we are a particle of universe that can be connected to all other particles of the universe. And I believe Rumi wrote Masnavi because he wanted to awake us into all this other sensitivity and alertness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole practice. Basically, you said it.
Well, I think that this term surrender and the term submission both give the possibility of interpretation of something that's very set. This is this, I submit to it. And it could be kind of a very fatalistic kind of outlook on the world. And I'm hearing something different from you. When we are willing to surrender and to submit to what is right now, just the way it is, it seems to me that with that expansion that you're talking about, we are also surrendering and submitting to all the possibilities that exist that could come through. So it actually puts us, instead of in this very tight little box, I submit, I surrender, here I am stuck, it actually opens us up for so much light and possibility to shine through us. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, it's just, fool me once. Shame on me, fool me twice. I don't know, the expression of say, fool me once. I can't imagine how creative organized religion can be in order to put us always in a very limited box and tell us these, but not that, these, but not that. And in reality, it's not about this. It's about you are an illuminated chalice holding the breath of God, and there is no limit for you to evolve. And, take everything Rumi says. Most of the time, he says it in Farsi, but then there is a verse of Quran. How can we misunderstand all these amazing verses and not be changed by it? I don't understand. I mean, the first time I read the whole Quran, I was maybe 28 years old. And the person who came out of reading it wasn't the same person who did not read Quran. Then I went to Bible, and the person who came and understood or absorbed the wisdom within the Bible was not the Fariba that came and finished the Bible. I mean, the words are still there. I mean, I can show you the verses of Quranic verses of Rumi explaining about the creation. It takes a lot of verses of Quran. That's not there, is not different. But then he honors the soul within you to take all these other interpretations aside, all these limitations of being in a box aside, and give the spirit, who really our spirit is, the crown of the creation. And with being the crown of the creation, being a steward of the world, it comes responsibility. That's the whole, he didn't make it up. He took it from Quran to say we are responsible for each breath within, each breath we take in. That's why they practice the name of God, because it's like inhaling God and exhaling that attribute that they focus on. They understand that they have the ability to absorb all these attributes. And we know it too, but I think that's why I chose the verse that we are so focused on tangible, but not intangible. And I think the wisdom and the gift of people like Rumi, teachers like Rumi, is to open it up and say, it's expansion, it's expansion. And then beyond expansion is the medium of love. And to have love on the earth, we have to practice it. We have to become it. It's Rumi even talks about it. It says, love is the birth of heaven. Its shadow is on the earth. But it doesn't need to be a shadow. With practicing step by step, he wouldn't write Masnavi if he wanted to leave it to be just a shadow of something that we wish to see on the earth, but we cannot harvest it, and we cannot plant it on the earth. So it takes us to practice. So he's talking to us.
I want to, for a second, call on Kendra as somebody that I know has really given not just a lot of thought, but a lot of heart energy to this idea of accepting what is, of finding a way to go with the flow that doesn't feel as if maybe she's completely fighting her way upstream the whole time. I wonder if you have any question you wanted to ask or thought you wanted to contribute.
Well, thank you so much for speaking, and it was so great to it's kind of inspired me. I was even Googling on the side, like, free intro courses to Sufism. Like, I would like to learn. I guess my biggest thing, because I do read a lot about it, and I try to practice it in my own life. And for me, the biggest struggle is, how do you, you can surrender and just be pretty apathetic and I'll just sit here and see what the universe throws at me, and then maybe I'll go with it from there. Or like the difference between surrendering to what is or working for things that you want to, which may push against the universe or try to achieve certain goals that maybe aren't for you or wasn't what should be. Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah, it makes sense. It does.
Yeah, just sitting and waiting for things to happen to you, or I guess maybe it's more when things do happen, you just kind of surrender to the result and then go from there.
I think these teachings, and I must say I teach it as an educator, and it is Sufism what I teach, but I teach it as an educator because people that come to me they are from all different paths of life, and the concepts is what I focus on. So it's really important to know that this tradition comes from a co-creation. It's a perpetuation of creation. You are co-creator with your inner knowing, with the God within, with the knowledge within. It's a collaboration. So you don't sit aside and let things happen. You always look, it's so much to do with love to Rumi, when he wanted passionately to talk to us about love, he wanted us to be alert, in tune. So feeling everything almost, opening, understanding it, but also a direction. If anything, he emphasized is اختیار است, اختیار است, اختیار. Is your will, is your will, is your will. Is almost your will finds a harmonious way to everything that's happening. And it starts having its own collaboration. Does it make sense? Yeah. So, for example, if you have a passion and the circumstances are so bad, assume you cannot pursue your passion. However, every moment that arrives, you're turning toward your passion. It's always, Rumi has this sentence that always circulates in my being. تا توانی می تراش و می خراش تا دم آخر دمی غافل مباش. So until the last breath, sharpen your pencil and scratch your paper. Don't stay moveless for a moment. So it's like, it takes time for us to understand our own heart, because we are full of layers of what they say they wanted us to do. What they think of us. It's just like we bombarded about who we're supposed to be in the society. So it's almost, I have a meditation in the morning that I call it soul room, because when everybody was so nervous, we didn't have time to pay attention to our inner state. So while you are going through circumstances that you think are not desirable, you have always to connect to your passion, to something you desire. That's how you manifest what you look for. And, Rumi is really, in some level, almost, it sounds impossible sometimes, because he believes once you connect to your own heart to understand yourself and take time for it, you can connect to everything else. So it takes a lot of time to just sit down, write about it, understand our own desires and understand our own passion, and then focus on that to create that. That's what I can tell you I have seen over and over. Unfortunately, we are human beings. We have nervous system. We can get very nervous when we are in, bad circumstances. I got just one shot, my first shot last week. And although I had a reaction to it, I wasn't even worried about the reaction, because it was like the whole, not going out. It's just, something was more relaxed, because the whole pandemic make all of us being so like boiling and a little bit paranoid and crazy. I mean, we human beings, we get affected by every disaster and every hardship that come our way. But to be able to open up few moments and say, in that moment, I am co-creator. I am aligned with the divine. And add to those moments through the day. I call it moments of connections. And connecting is not necessarily connecting out there to something. If we don't understand our own inner heart, how can we love or understand another person? It's very difficult. So it's important to do that. I would say, do a lot of pampering of yourself and what you need. And then in a moment you are relaxed, you have a shiny moment to tell you, I want these and not these. And as soon as you pay attention to all of don'ts and yeses, you will navigate your path.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer. As you were talking, Fariba, I had this image, I guess, when you were talking about co-creating with the divine, of someone with a sailboat. And we can't sit there and blow wind into the sails on our own and go anywhere. However, we can work with that wind. And you kept talking about the holy breath of the divine. Yeah. So that you could think of that as a breeze or a wind. And, and we won't go anywhere if there's this, even if there's a giant wind, if we don't know how to use our sail properly to harness the wind and go where we need to go. We have to be very actively involved to work together with the power of the wind. I just wondered if that was
actually, you reminded me on God's steps and our steps. So we can take like tiny little steps, many of them, and nothing happen. And there is one giant steps that can come like the holy wind to get us to the shore. And we are blowing, or trying to create a wind, and nothing happens. But we try. You see, even having the COVID vaccine, completely different technology, is absolutely thanks to scientists who pay attention and try different techniques. That everybody was against it until COVID came. And only 2 companies who were experimenting on it were able to create a vaccine completely different way, which is not a vaccine really. It's a new, it's a groundbreaking new field for curing cancer and other diseases that I'm sure they will figure out after we are out of this panic time. But it's really important to see that a lot of people were working very hard, and a lot of people were saying no to them, but they still published the paper, and few people pay attention. And now the whole universe, whole world is benefiting it. So it's really important in those hardship, in those hard work that we do, there is always something else. Have you heard the people who are very successful in their work? They say people were not there to see how many times we failed, and we were working hard and harder, and then suddenly, a breakthrough comes through. So they keep saying it is luck, but I was in the right place when the luck knocked at my door. So we always take those steps to just hope that the big steps comes in. And you never know where it comes from. So.
Maurice, what were you about to ask or add there?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because of Kendra's question, like Islam means surrender. And so it kind of depends on your state of mind when you read the word, especially surrender, or you hear the word karma, for example. I've got good karma, bad karma, these words. And it seems like it really depends on what kind of state of consciousness or mind or that you're in, as to really how these words resonate to you. Because as I heard Fariba speak, and I've heard others speak, if you can calm the outer mind so you can go inward, feel at peace or be calm, then if you come from your godlike qualities, your best qualities, the better angels of yourself, sometimes in different religions it's called your higher self, you have that connection with God, if you want, or at least something higher, then surrender or working with karma and all that stuff, it just flows a lot easier because, you know, you're not into calculating this, that, and this right away. You're just going with it. And you're feeling, you're coming from who you more truly are, not, you know. And so I think connecting to the best godlike qualities and a higher self and creating that connection. And then when we see these words like surrender or karma or anything else, it changes the whole meaning, but it also kind of, at least for myself, awakens me and liberates me to be able to move and not be passive, because you're moving with your true self, which is the motion of spirit, which is the divine, you know, and it's not static, it's moving, it's vibrating. So, and I heard a lot of that in what Fariba said. I don't know if Fariba might have a better way of saying it or summarizing that, but
Well, that's why I gave the example of going through hardship. When we go through hardship, we are human. Pain is not pleasant to our physical senses. But through the practices, through meditation, you can have an opening to connect to something beyond the difficult circumstances. And kind of there, I think it's a lot of people come to problem, because I come always from the point of the trust. I trust that the world beneath me can hold on to me. But if we have experience, especially with children that have really difficult parents, somebody who had to take care of them did not really take care of them. So the trust is not there. So I think a lot of it as an adult has to do with trusting that something bigger is out there, out of the pain, personal pain that I go through, and being able to align. That's why I mentioned aligning with the divine, being able to align with something bigger than who we are in that moment that we feel the pressure. The only way I can say I could go through my hardship was then creating a moment of calmness in my mind and being able to make that bigger and bigger, and expanding it. And sometimes, many times we fail, but many times we open a window that we find the solution of what we are in. We can almost see ourselves from above and be able to say, there is a door, there is an action I can take, that I can create more positive outcome in my life, and invite people to my life that are not, for example, like the parents who didn't honor the soul of the child. So I think it's really important to think there is no rootless, meaningless pain when we are in it. It's just for us to be able to connect it to something that has meaning for us. Because, you are like the pen who is writing and painting your life. And you have to give yourself a whole field of playfulness to be able to nibble, experience, experiment, try. One of the door, I keep mentioning it, one of the door of enlightenment is playfulness. Even in the worst time, look at the children. I look at the refugee camps, and they are middle of nowhere. and they find something like a ball and they are playing. In that moment, they experience something. Are they aware that, they didn't have food? Are they aware they are not in good circumstance? Yes, but that opening of being a child in a moment, regardless of what happened to you, it's something that we can always invest in. If I love anything about Rumi in this month blog, I wrote a blog about resurrection, the meaning of resurrection in Rumi's poetry. And I mentioned that how come, Rumi was driven out of his hometown. For many, many years, he traveled with 300 of his father disciples and his family throughout, difficult journey. There was no home for him. He had to leave a lot of people behind, including his sister, and his beloved teachers. And as soon as they reside somewhere temporary, for a longer time, his mother died. How come he can write all these poetry? I think because he could connect his heart to the pumping of the holy and majesty of what the creation is. Because when you read his poetry, is abundance. It's all about focus on the breath. With one weak breath, you can create the whole holy breath. With one rose, you can create the rose garden. I mean, over and over, he is talking about the perpetuation of kindness, perpetuation of creation. Is almost this world is a garden that all you need to do is put in good seeds in it. So for this world to be able to flourish. And what better good seed to invest on than yourself? So you got to have joy, you have to got hope, and you have to have trust. That's what I have learned. And that's what I have learned also from all the teachers that going to the worst spots of the world, that is a lot of unhappiness is there. And whenever I ask them, how do you do that? They say, I do it with joy.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like to always ask at the end if there's anyone who feels just drawn to give a few words of thanks to our just magnificent speaker today, Fariba Entishari, for all that she has shared through her heart experience, her mentally, and through her life experience about the Sufi tradition, so that we can deepen in our wisdom along our path, because there's so many parallels. So is there someone who would just love to just give a thanks to Fariba?
I'll give her thanks. I feel like a piece of wood or something that is like a reed and a flute or something. And then when you talk, I understand. But when you stop talking, I don't understand.
I keep talking.
But it's wonderful to experience the understanding, at least for some time. So that's what I most appreciate. It's like listening to some beautiful piece of music that, you appreciate it. And it keeps searching, trying to find out all these mysteries, all these paradoxes to the intellect, right?
Yeah.
But when, you can sense something about the love and and the breath and the unity and the joy in spite of the suffering and what you're saying. But mostly I appreciate being the reed. So thank you very much, Fariba.
You are a wonderful reed for God to put its lips on it and play a beautiful song. Empty of Robert.
So beautiful.
It's all divine. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so thank you so much again, Fariba.
Thank you.
Little-
Thank you so much, everyone. And Renee.
Thanks everyone for attending as well. Take good care. Aloha.
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 Mm.